Welcome. For this session we're going to look at how to understand the requirements of the assessment for 19444 Deliver Group Training Sessions for Adult Learners. So what you'll need to have in front of you is your assessment task pack, which looks like this on the cover. Should be a staple document, and you may need a pen as well. So if you don't have that with you, please pause this video and go and grab it. Once you've got that, then you can continue. Okay, so the purpose of the session is just to familiarise yourself with this assessment material and the tasks that you need to do to meet the requirements of this particular standard. So just as a way of introduction, this standard is about delivering group training sessions for adult learners. It's a level 4 standard and it's 8 credits. So if you're completing or working towards your national certificate in adult education and training, this assessment will count towards 8 credits of that qualification. So let's have a look at what you need to do. So I'm just going to go down now to page 2. Okay, page 2 is your cover sheet. So what you'll need to put in here is your name. Your last name goes in this box here, and your first and middle names go in the second box. Your address and your date of birth. Your gender, male or female, and if you know your NSN number, your NZQA number, then put it in the box here. Alright. If you don't, that's okay. We might be able to track it down based on your date of birth. Okay. You'll need to make sure that you also just sign that front page here as well. The rest of this front page here, or the second page, is for us to fill in, so don't worry about that. The next page, page 3, is just an overview of a record for our own internal use. You won't need to worry about that on page 3. Page 4 is a bit of an introduction to the assessment. Just tells you what level 4 is about, and also some list of useful resources. You should now be on page 5, where you just need to put your name and the name of your company on the top of that page. And we'll just have a look now, a bit of an overview of what you need to do for this task. So you'll see here the outcomes. By the end of this assessment, you'll be able to prove that you can prepare and deliver group training sessions for adult learners, deliver it and review those sessions as well. Now, just an important note, all these activities when it comes to preparing, delivering and reviewing group training sessions, that process must be done in accordance with the relevant policies, procedures of your organisation. If you're doing it in another organisation or behalf of somebody else, then you'll need to make sure that you meet their requirements there as well. Now you'll see here special note 2, this standard requires the delivery of 3 group training sessions. Each session needs to be at least 30 minutes of teaching time, alright, per session. And notice that group means 3 or more adult learners. So if you're doing on-the-job training where you might only have 1 or 2 learners, that will not be an appropriate context by which you can do this assessment. You need to have a group. So your group could be 3, could be 4, could be 15, could be 20, could be 30. So long as there's at least 3 or more adult learners, then you'll be fine. If you've reached this point and you just realise now that perhaps you don't do group training, then you need to contact Edbiz, and we might be able to find you a suitable replacement for this assessment. That might be geared, for example, towards one-on-one coaching, one-on-one workplace training. So if you're realising that perhaps this is not the right assessment for you in your context, please let us know. Otherwise, let's continue. Now you'll see here for the special note 3, evidence could be one training plan that includes 3 different training sessions, or a training plan for each session. Okay. So a training session, remember, is at least 30 minutes of teaching time. That could be those 3 sessions could be part of a one-day training workshop, all right, or a one-day of training in your classroom. So again, you don't need to think that every session has to be a separate day, all right, or a separate workshop. It could be those two or three sessions could be part of the same larger training session. Okay, so long as it's at least 30 minutes delivered to a group, and those 30 minutes must be teaching time. 30 minutes of teaching time. All right. Let's have a look here. We must be on page 6, assessment task summary. So just turn to that page. You'll see here for task 1, you need to do some preparation. Alright, so we need session plans for each session. Alright, each session must be at least 30 minutes of teaching time. Okay. So as part of your preparation, you need to put together some kind of documentation which shows evidence of your planning. If you're currently using session plans or training plans or lesson plans, then you will attach those as part of your evidence. Okay, but that will be part of your planning, and we'll look at that in more detail shortly. Task 2 is about delivering the training. Right. So part of that delivery, as part of your evidence, you have to collect and attach any supporting evidence to show that how you delivered those sessions. We'll talk about that soon. And the last part is you just need to review your training sessions. Okay. So let's just go down now. Just a note here: don't use this address here. If you've got this address, you're looking at an older version of the assessment material, which is still fine to use, but we have recently changed our address. Okay, so please use the address that's in your A5 course participant handbook. So do not send your portfolios to that address. So let's have a look at task 1, your training preparation. So this task is designed to assess your ability to effectively prepare to deliver group training sessions. Remember, group is 3 or more. So you need to complete the relevant questions, alright, and you need to write session plans. So you need to provide your assessor with a copy of the session plans for delivery of 3 group training sessions of at least 30 minutes teaching time per session. Note here the 30 minutes must be actual time spent teaching your learners. So it doesn't count, for example, if you teach for 20 minutes and then you let your learners just go and practice on their own, alright, for the remaining 10 minutes, or do some self-directed learning for 10 minutes. It must be at least 30 minutes where you're up front, you're working with your learners, you're explaining, you're showing, you're coaching, you're directing, you're actively involved in their learning. The learners must be adult, okay, so over 15 years of age, and you must have at least 3 participants. There's a note there: if you're delivering a half day or long program, you might like to use coffee breaks and lunch breaks to divide your sessions. So what we mean by that is the morning session could be session 1, and when it comes to morning tea, that's the end of it. When your learners come back from morning tea, that could be your second session, right? And you'll need to have a plan for that. And then perhaps after lunch, the afternoon, could be the third session. So that's one way you could look at working out how you could complete your 3 sessions. Now remember, that could all be on one big training plan or 3 separate training plans. You need to also provide copies of any printed materials like workbooks, handouts, PowerPoint presentations that you use to deliver those training sessions, and also a list of any other resources that perhaps you couldn't copy, like any training aids, computer software, physical games and activities. You might want to take photographs of those and attach them as part of your evidence. Also copies of any memos or emails around any bookings that you had to do, anything related to organising the training, any equipment and personnel that you needed access to. Alright. Now your session plans they must have these following 4 things in them. They need to have learning outcomes. So your session plan needs to have the learning outcomes for each session. Now those outcomes should suit the intended learner needs, alright, and they should be outcomes that have been confirmed with stakeholders. Your session plan has to include the delivery and assessment methods you're going to use for each session, and also review activities, how you're going to review each session. Okay, so there needs to be some structure to your session plan. So do make sure whatever session plan template or document you're using, it must have those 4 things in them to be used for this assessment. So we've got a preparation check sheet here. Now note, this is for use by the assessor. Okay, so Edbiz will complete this, not you. So you might want to make a note of it, that you do not write anything on this preparation check sheet. It's there for us to use. It is going to be very helpful for you to refer to this though, because if your evidence doesn't meet these criteria, then you're not going to meet the assessment requirements. Okay, so do familiarise yourself with this check sheet, but don't write on it. So that's there on page 8 and page 9. So just a reminder, for task 1, you're providing copies of your session plan, any supporting documentation, alright, copies of any PowerPoints, workbooks, handouts that you used. So that's all part of your preparation. Task 2 is all around your delivery. Okay. Now for this one, you'll be observed delivering the 3 training sessions, which are at least 30 minutes of training time. You'll need to organise someone to observe you deliver the training, preferably your manager. Alright. Now that person, whoever's going to observe you, needs to be approved by your Edbiz assessor. So you just need to flick Edbiz an email or a quick phone call and just let us know who your observer is going to be, and we need to approve that person. Part of the criteria we'll be looking for in your observer is do they hold a adult education qualification certificate? Are they able to, or do they have that equivalent experience that qualifies them to be able to observe you deliver group training? Alright. Make sure that you contact your observer well in advance to give them time to arrange to be present. Alright, so just a few things here that you need to familiarise yourself with, so read through those. Explain to him or her you're having your performance assessed. Alright, they need to complete that observation form. It's a good idea to check with your participants to make sure they're comfortable having an observer present. All 3 sessions may be assessed on the same day and with the same group of participants if you're delivering a half-day or day-long program. Okay. Now, you need to have 2 of your participants complete checklists for each session. Okay. Remember, you've got 3 sessions. Each session needs to have 2 participants also complete a checklist. So you'll be observed by your observer, but also 2 of your learners or trainees in that group will also complete some evidence for you as well. Now if you're doing these sessions consecutively as part of a 1-day or half-day training program or workshop, they could be the same 2 learners. Okay. So you'll need to also give them the heads up in terms of how you're going to use them and make sure that they're okay with being involved in this for you. You'll need to familiarise yourself with the observation check sheet that your observer and your learners are going to use. Use group learning methods to maximise learning opportunities. So you're going to need to use discussion groups, action learning, alright, lots of flexibility and variety, and you need to manage the group learning, alright, by using methods such as these here. You have to create and maintain a learning environment that matches learner and course requirements. So think about interaction, think about your voice level, think about cultural and social needs, and you'll need to collect feedback from your participants, okay, as well for each training session. Alright. So let's have a look at task 3. The last part is you just reviewing each session. So you'll need to produce evidence that you've sought and analysed stakeholder. So when we talk about stakeholder, we're talking about the learners, but we also could be talking about the employer, we could be talking about the training organisation that you work for, could be talking about the learners' managers or manager. as well as your own reactions to each of those 3 sessions. Learner and stakeholder reaction will need to address the organisation, how you organised your and planned for your training, the delivery of it, the content, the location, the amount of interaction that happened during each session, and the opportunity for them to actually practice, to put into practice the learning that you taught them. Now, evidence of all of that for 3 sessions you'll need to provide. Now, we'll look at some tools shortly and how you can do that. Perhaps what we'll do is, if we just scroll down, I'm just going to have a look now, show you these sheets that you'll need to complete. There's a helpful checklist here on this page that just shows you things that you'll need to attach. Remember, don't send them to the addresses that are in your assessment task. Send your portfolio to the address that is in your course participant handbook. Now, what we've got here, these next few pages are forms that you're going to use to complete your assessment. So this is your portfolio cover sheet. So you'll need to complete this page, your name, address, phone number, NZQA number. Now you're going to need to complete this narrative and just give Edbiz a bit of context in terms of what are these training sessions that you're delivering. So first of all, just give us a really brief outline of what kind of experience you've had in tutoring and training and facilitating. Provide a brief description of the organisation you're designing and facilitating the learning for this assessment. And now there's just a few questions that we need you to answer. First one here is, how did you identify and decide what the learning outcomes were going to be for that session? For example, it may be that perhaps they've been dictated to you by a standard that you're assessing against. Could be they're given to you by your organisation. How was it that you decided what the learning outcomes were going to be for that session, and how did they reflect the learning needs and expectations of stakeholders? So if it's like compliance type training, they're doing it because they have to, then that will be one way that they reflect the needs and expectations of stakeholders, because they have to do it. They have to complete that training. So how did you identify the learning outcomes, and how do they reflect the needs and expectations of stakeholders? You'll see you've got several lines here you can write. So just for a level 4 assessment, look at at least 2 or 3 descriptive sentences with examples that give us a really good background in terms of how you did that. Number 2, how did you prepare supporting material? So how did you prepare training plans? How did you work out where the venue was going to be? How did you prepare the resources and training evaluation material? Were they documents that you just sourced off the internet, or did you have to create them yourself? Where did they come from? So just make a few notes there for number 2. Number 3 is, what learning barriers and learning styles were identified, and how did you address these in your session plans? Learning barriers could be noise. If you're training in a noisy environment, it could be time constraints. Learning styles could be people who prefer to learn hands-on or visually. So there's a few examples here in terms of things that you should be thinking about. Number 4, how does the session content and assessment methods that you chose match the learning outcomes, and how do they suit the opportunities and limitations of the training venue? Okay, so how are you going to assess each session? Are you going to observe them doing something? Are they going to have to complete a written activity? Is it going to happen through some discussion or role play, or how is it that you're going to verify that the learners have actually understood and met the outcomes of the training session? So how does the session and content and assessment methods chosen match the learning outcomes? Okay. So all you're doing there for question number 4 is just saying what it is you're going to train, how you're going to assess them, and how that relates to the learning outcomes, and what you're able to use in terms of the actual training venue. Number 5 is describe the criteria you selected for reviewing the training sessions. So what are the key things that you're gonna ask at the end of each training session to help you review whether or not that training session was effective or not? Okay, so what are the key things that you're going to be looking for to be able for you to review each training session? Okay, so examples could be the amount of interaction. That could be some of the criteria that you use for reviewing your training sessions. It could be feedback on feedback forms, feedback from supervisors. It could be whether or not the learners could actually correctly apply the knowledge that you taught them during the assessment part of the training session. So number 5 is just outlining the criteria that you're going to use to review how your sessions went. Number 6 is how did you prepare and maintain a positive learning environment? So what kind of things did you do to make sure that there was participation, that resources were available, that there was really good two-way communication happening? So you'll just write your notes in there. And how was the learner's performance measured against the outcomes? So for this bit here, what kind of formative assessment methods and techniques did you use during that session to work out whether or not the learners actually understood what you were teaching them? And then what kind of assessment did you do at the end to work out did they actually learn what they needed to learn? Did they actually meet the objectives of the training session? Okay, so you just need to make a few notes here. How was the learner's performance measured against the learning outcomes? How did you make sure that just wasn't a whole waste of time, but they did actually learn something from that session? Alright, now remember you've got the learner checklist. Now remember you've got 2 learners in each session that have to complete this. So you'll need to, there's only 1 page, so I think we must be on page 20. So it's a really good idea to identify who those 2 learners are going to be, and before you even do your training session, give these to your learners and just review them with them so they know what these things mean, so that they're able to make the right decision to determine whether or not you actually did these things or not. So up here they'll put your name, the topic of the session, their name, the date, the start and finish time of the session. Now here's the things that they're going to be verifying. That you discussed the learning outcomes with your learners and that they reflected their actual learning needs. So the session, that training session, actually was meaningful to them. It was teaching them stuff that they needed to know, and that they were advised of what those outcomes were at the start of the session. Number 2, that you actually catered for their skills, knowledge, abilities and learning styles throughout the training. You're advised of the learning outcomes, sequence of learning activities and how they were going to be assessed. Alright, so that was something that you'd probably do at the start of the session. That used a variety of training processes throughout that session. For example, explanations, demonstrating, interaction, getting the learners to practice, doing consolidation activities. That the environment was positive, wasn't too fast, wasn't too slow, there was good two-way communication happening. That you gave feedback to the learners on their performance, and that the learner was able to review and assess the training session. Alright. So what we mean by number 7 is that you gave your learners an opportunity to actually give you some feedback on how that training session went. Maybe they completed, for example, an evaluation form, or maybe you discussed at the end of the session in terms of what they enjoyed and what some of the challenges may have been during that training session. So each of your 2 learners will complete that, and they'll sign it for each session. So there's the one there for your second learner, alright, right there. Alright. And here is the observer checklist. So your observer will complete this one. Now you'll see on this one here is actually one checklist, but it's used for the 3 sessions. Okay, So this is assuming that you're using the same observer for all 3 sessions. So all of those criteria are the same, whoops, but this is the column where they'll say whether or not you did that for session 1. This is the column they'll complete for session 2, and this is the column they'll complete for session 3. Okay. Now, this page here, you'll be able to use it for your three sessions, but the previous 2, these ones here, your learner checklist, you'll need to photocopy these, alright, because you'll need 2 of them for your first session, 2 of them for your second session, 2 of them for your third session. So you'll need to photocopy at least 2 or 3 more sets of these ones here to use in your assessment. This one here you won't need to photocopy because you can use it for all 3 sessions. So look at these things here that your observer is going to observe you on, that the learning outcome sequence of learnings and activities and intended assessment process were explained. So a lot of these things are similar to what your learner is going to observe you on. That you delivered your session incorporating a range of processes, alright, which processes were used, your observer will tick. You maintain a positive learning environment, and again the application of the assessment process and checks of the achievement learning outcomes were made throughout the training. So what we mean by number 4 is that you regularly check throughout that training session that the learners are actually understanding what you were training by asking questions, observing them, giving feedback, finding out through formative assessment techniques that they actually were understanding as you were going. Okay, so that's not a very large check sheet that your observer will do. Now, if you are doing this assessment in conjunction with, for example, 7115, where also you have to use 3 training sessions, then your observer could be also observing you for 7115 at the same time. Okay, so these 3 training sessions could be the same 3 training sessions that you're using for another assessment. Okay. So in that case, your observer could have the observation sheet for this one, 19444, in front of them, and at the same time they're observing you on that, they could also have the observation check sheet for 7115 in front of them as well. So doing 2 observations at the same time for 2 different standards, but the same training session. Okay. So your observer will fill in that form there. Okay. Now, for each session, remember you have to do a bit of a review. So for session 1, you need to state briefly how did you review each of your 3 training sessions. Okay. So for session 1, how did you review session 1? Alright, what did you do? Did you ask your learners some questions? What went well, what didn't went well? Did you get them to fill in an evaluation form? Did you read your comments that were made from your observer? How did you review the training session? And what kind of materials did you provide for the assessment? So remember, at the end of each training, or somewhere in the training session towards the end, you'll need to do some kind of activity with your learners just to verify they actually met the learning outcomes and actually learned something that they needed to learn from that session. So what kind of materials did you provide? Was it a quiz they had to complete? Was an observation that they had to be made on each learner? So for each session you answer that same question: how did you review, and what materials did you provide for assessment for session 2 and for session 3? Alright, now the next criteria of your part of your review now is for each session you need to briefly state, well, what kind of conclusions has your analysis of your participant feedback led you to? So assuming you evaluated all of your 3 sessions, and one way you may have done that is to get your participants at the end of each session just to complete maybe an evaluation form or give you some feedback. What were the main themes that came out? Were there anything that came up that made you think about things you might have to change? What were the positives? Were there any constructive feedback in terms of what you might need to do differently? So this section is just a summary of the key things that you concluded from the feedback from each of those 3 sessions. And this next bit is just a bit of self-assessment. So what you need to do for this one here is, for each session, what's your own personal goals? So you might say, look, for session 1, it was really about me experimenting using different training methods and letting my learners have fun, but also having fun myself, delivering the session in a relaxed way, using lots of engagement, and also making sure that my learners actually learnt the stuff. So that could be an example of a personal goal for a session. So you need to say, what was the goal for each session? Now, the goal for session 1, session 2 could be the same goal. So it don't have to be 3 different goals. But for each goal, you just need to say, hey, was that goal achieved? Alright, did that goal actually get met? Now, it may have got met, it may not have. So it's not going to impact on whether or not you pass the assessment or not if you didn't achieve your goal. It's just about you having a goal and then recognizing whether or not that goal was achieved. Okay. So, based on the feedback you received from participants, based on whether or not your goals were achieved, this next bit here is, well, hang on, what changes would you make? Alright. So if you have to deliver session 1 again in the future, based on that feedback, based on the goals and whether or not those goals were met, what would you do differently? What changes would you make? Now, I would encourage you to come up with at least one change that you would make if you had to deliver that session again. Alright. So again, there's only just enough room to for maybe a good sentence for each session in terms of what you'd do differently next time. Now, guess what? We're almost there. This last bit here is just your manager checklist. So once you've completed those 3 training sessions, you need to have your manager look through that evidence that you've collated together, which includes your session plans, the feedback, the observation forms, the feedback forms your learners did, your reflection, and just go over that with your manager. And your manager will just complete this attestation here, that the learning outcomes were defined in consultation with the trainer, that how you would review those sessions, alright, met organisation requirements, and feedback was documented in a way that met the requirements of your organisation. So for example, if your organisation says, look, whenever you're doing training for us, you must use these feedback forms. So that's what we mean by number 3, that feedback from stakeholders regarding the training sessions self-review were documented in accordance to your organisational requirements. Alright, so your manager will fill in that form there. On this page here, page 27, is just you listing the supporting documentation that you're attaching. Remember, your training session plans, copies of PowerPoint slides or workbooks or things that were used in your session. Alright. And the last thing is just you and your manager complete this agreement on this page here, page 28. Alright, that's just to verify that that is your own work, that what you're submitting isn't for another trainer, but it is your own work there. Okay, and then you've just got a copy of the actual unit standard in the back of your assessment. And lastly, on these pages here, this is the assessment schedule. So this is what Edbiz are going to use to mark your assessment. The evidence statements, what you need to provide us, and the judgment, how good that evidence needs to be. Okay, so familiarise yourself with this, because this is what you're going to be marked against. So that's on those pages there. All right, so that's just for your own reference. So what we've just done is we've just gone through the requirements for Unit Standard 19444. As you've seen, if you're doing this as part of a trainer course, then you'll see how it ties in really well with 7115 and other assessments that you're doing on that course, where you could use the same 3 training sessions. I hope that makes some sense to you. If you have any questions about this assessment task, please contact Edbiz, where we can give you some more support and maybe some clearer explanation in terms of how this impacts on your own context. So good luck with your assessment task. It does have a due date. If you're not sure of the due date, please contact Edbiz, because your assessment will need to be completed before that due date. Good luck.